Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the Charles Schwab Challenge. This is my Before the Lock show where I cover ownership projections. We're going to go look at the cheapie plays that I like. I've got some more information on the course I'm going to cover. And also I'm going to even talk about round one bets, give you some information on that, talk about what I'm looking at. And so with all that said, thank you for stopping by. Give me about 30 minutes and we'll get through all this information and help you make sure that you've got everything you need before you lock in those final DFS lineups and maybe some final bets. Okay, let's go talk some golf. All right, so I talked very briefly about this on the course breakdown, but I want to bring it up again because it is pretty important, which is the stretch of holes 3, 4, and 5, which is known as the horrible horseshoe. This stretch of holes is actually the hardest set of holes that the PGA Tour players play outside of a major. And what's kind of interesting about it, what I was going to, the most important is that the guys that have typically done well here or won the tournament have done very well on that stretch of holes. So if you kind of just look, there's maybe one nuance, which is Kevin Kisner highlighted here, who shot 1 over during the 4 days on those holes. But everybody else has won this tournament. Has shot even or 1 under or 2 under over the last, I don't know, was that 6 years? So I just wanted to point that out, and just again, some names that, of course, I've been talking about. Actually, quite a few of these are my picks between Berger, Nah, Kisner, Spieth, and Kirk, leaving out Rose and Kokrak out of my top 15 plays. But again, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, show it to you. I thought it was kind of interesting, and yeah, wanted to cover it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit. I always said, and I kind of mentioned this, I don't know if it was in a tweet or whatever it was, that when it comes to round one leaders and my bets, right, I always tell you I take Sebastian Munoz. I haven't done that yet for this one just because he's got a later tee time. But on that note, I always typically like to focus, and I just kind of look at guys that I know have the ability to go low for one round and have done it in the past. Also, I look at make sure they have a very early tee time, and we're going to talk about why that's important here in a second for this tournament for round one. And also, it's a lot about the odds, right? So, there might be a guy that has an earlier tee time, but they're giving you like 35 to 1 to bet him as a first round leader. For me, that doesn't really make sense. What I'm kind of looking to do is spray a few more that give you a chance, because anybody, as you can see, this is last year, 2021, on the guys that went low on round one. And you've got guys like Eric Compton, who actually, funny enough, is in the field. But, this guy's, I give him a ton of credit, right? He has some health issues, but it's a guy you never expect to shoot a 65 round one. Typically, he does not make cuts, or you've probably never heard of him. But, Jordan Spieth, that makes sense. He shot a 63, and then Sergio Garcia shot a 63 last year to start out, and you can see kind of this was their finishing score. You even had Snedeker show up there, Hickok, Hadwin. But yeah, I wanted to share that with you, and then I'm going to tell you the guys that I'm looking at. If we look at 2020, the guys that went low first round, you had Justin Rose, HV3, Morikawa, JT, Answer, and Vegas. Now, I didn't do correlation of when their tee times were, but at least I just wanted to share with you, so you've got some guys from round one. Then we'll talk about weather and what I'm looking at. And then this would be 2019. You had Tony Finau shoot the lowest round. Then Jordan again. So kind of keep that in mind. Sloan, Jonas Blix out of nowhere. Watney, Uline, Walker, JJ Henry, Hadley, Duff, Molnex. So what I liked about this, I wanted to show you is, again, just, yeah, you're going to have a couple guys that you think could go low. But funny enough, a lot of the big time guys typically don't come out and shoot a really low round one. It's pretty rare. It's some of the kind of no-name guys that can put one round together, and typically they have their early tee times. Also, I'll give you a little side note. If you've never bet round one leaders or finishing position, just so you know, if guys tie, so let's hypothetically say you have a guy that's 100 to 1, you bet $10, which if he actually ends up round one leader, that's $1,000. But another guy ties his low score, you're literally going to get half of that. You're going to get $500. So I just want you to be aware of that, because it's a bit of a bummer if you somehow do pick the round one leader, have money on it, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get paid, whatever. And then all of a sudden you didn't know that all these other guys, maybe there's 2 or 3 guys that also shot, let's say, 7 under the first day. You're going to get split either 2 or 3 ways. So Just want to put that little note in there if you've never bet round one leaders. All right, the last one, I believe this is 2018, when I believe Kevin now won, but neither here or there. It might be actually 19. It doesn't matter. This was the previous year. As I already mentioned, Kevin now, he also has a 61 on this course, but he shot a 62, another really low round. He had Charlie Hoffman shoot a 63 back, when he was just lighting it up in Texas. Griot, you got Andrew Putnam, Bo Hosler, and Johnny Vegas, which I think Vegas, I just want to go back. I think he showed up, yeah, right here. So in 2020, he also shot a low round, but he is not in the field. So we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so now let's talk about weather, and we'll dive into deeper into weather for the whole tournament, but this is specifically for Thursday. That's upcoming. I just pulled this from Windfinder, and you're going to see that, as usual, especially in Texas, that the early morning tee time guys are going to have probably the better side of the wind conditions. Now, I was saying at 8 a.m. it could gust up to 17, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm more kind of what's this steady kind of flow of wind here. And you can see pretty much until the afternoon, which is, makes sense. They're going to have the better wind conditions. And it's not that it's going to get super crazy in the afternoon. But also what I like is you've got usually moisture. So the greens typically hold better in the morning. You've got guys that have not walked on these greens yet. So the putting surfaces are usually immaculate. And so from a putting perspective, which is very key, I like, so that is typically the elements that usually come into play when guys go low early in the morning. Now, again, it's not that the guys in the afternoon, you're going to have some guys also go low, but what I've noticed is typically the low round will come out of the early morning tee times. That's my own perspective. All right, so with all that said, this is a bit of an eye chart, so don't try to, you could try to read it, but these are the guys for round one, early morning tee times that I've already kind of put some bets on. So you got Sam Ryder, who was literally the first guy going off the tee at 7:20. And Sam Ryder, if he'll string 3 or 4 birdies together, and then he'll put a lot of bogeys together too. But he's got that kind of scoreability. He's also really high odds. So also a side note is I don't put a ton on any of these guys. Anywhere between $5-10, something like that. And literally they hit, it could cover pretty much all your bets that depending on what you're betting. For me, it typically covers at least all of my bets for the 4-day tournament. So that's why I like betting the first round, because you get that money back right away. You're kind of now playing on their dollar. So you got also Brian Harmon, who could go low. EVR, amazing irons, and he is known for, he can either go super low or just totally blow it out. Griot, as you already saw, he's done it before. His game's coming back a little bit, but could, if the putter goes, he could do something. Trey Molinex recently had a pretty nice first round, and also I think he was up there on one of the sheets that I showed you. Rory Sabatini, right? I mean, look what he did at the Olympics, went nuts, and he'll do that. I mean, he'll have that one crazy round. I don't think I need to tell you more about Nah. He's shot plenty of low rounds here. Again, he's got an early tee time. I also identified Ryan Palmer. So these are guys going off the first tee, and then guys that are going off 10. So you got to remember that the horrible horseshoe is in here, but you got the two easiest holes is 1 and 2. Number 1 is giving up a ton of eagles over the history, so we'll see if that keeps up. So you also got to kind of make that decision. Hey, do I want my guys to go off the 10th, as I mentioned, get kind of some holes warmed up before they get to the easiest holes on the course. But you also, I think I also said 17 and 18 are also very, gettable holes. So on that side, I also picked out Mark Hubbard and Ryan Palmer are guys that I'm betting. But I mean, you could look at Billy Horschel. Just the odds aren't the great, the best. Joel Damon. I might actually have bet Joel Damon. I might not just highlight it here. But anyways, I just wanted to give you a quick kind of, this is my methodology, how I kind of do it. But of course, do it your own way. And, and if you don't, betting first round leaders is a very, very hard thing to hit, just like trying to figure out who the winner is going to be. I think picking a winner is almost easier than hitting a first round leader, hence why you're kind of just taking a bunch of shots, spreading out a few dollars here and there and see what happens. And the nice part of it is you get the money that day, and if it does work, like I said, you're already kind of ahead of the game. Just real quick, if you missed any of my previous shows, here's the comparable courses that I used to do a bit of my research and analysis. You're going to see about 20 guys here listed against my model. My custom model that I built. against these specific 9 courses. And that would be, you know, Travelers. You got TPC John Deere. You got, this would be Avondale Farms, but they just play for the Wells Fargo, not Quail. You got PGA National, TPC Southwind, Harbortown, Sea Island. You got Wailea, and of course Colonial. So that's the bulk of, well, not the bulk, that is the courses I used. And the number one guy that came out was HV3. You got Berger, Munoz, Tringali, Na. You can see kind of course, quite a few people has won here before. So if you want to know, also I use this for the guys that I'll be talking about on the cheapie side. With that said, let's go jump over to Fantasy National. Let's go look at the guys 7K and below. Okay, so I've hopped over to Fantasy National, and again, I always highly recommend if you want to start doing your own research, check it out. You do like a month trial basis and see if you like it. I think it's amazing, especially if you are focused on just betting on the PGA like myself. And you're going to notice using DraftKings pricing as always, but again, you can use these picks. They correlate pretty good with Yahoo or FanDuel. You might have some differences, but pretty much pretty good correlation. Again, as I did for all my other picks, I'm pulling up the last 6 rounds, or I'm sorry, last 6 tournaments they played in, or 24 rounds. It's all depending if they missed a cut here or there. I've got no filters on, and I already went through, as I mentioned, and used the comp courses to kind of highlight some of the guys, and then did further analysis to actually come to this. I think I've got about 13 guys identified that I had some interest in playing if I'm below 7K. Of course, I've got my 5 picks that we'll spend more time on. And right out of the bat, of course, well, real quick, I'm using this model is what's identifying. So when you see this model rank, this is getting pumped out of these 5 stroke gain categories that I think are the most important. Of course, on my larger model, as you notice, I had probably somewhere around 10. But approach is heavily weighted. You got to hit the fairways here. Putting, it really is going to come down to the approach and putting. These par 4s, because there's 7 of them, I plugged that in. We got to get opportunities gained. I mean, typically 15 under, depending on what the weather does, is what the score will end up being. Then I'm also looking at birdies gained, so you're going to want to see green here, hopefully more than even this if possible. And that's over the last 24 rounds. And then here you can see recent results. So what they've done over the last 5 tournaments they played in. And if I click on this, you'll see tournament history, which is pretty amazing that Luke Donald's actually never played in this event, because it really should have fit his game to 100%, especially back when he at one time was world number 1. Okay, and with that mentioned, I've kind of talked about Luke Donald. He has been playing pretty good golf for Luke Donald at this price tag. If you want to free up a bunch of space up top and you want to jam in, let's say, a Jordan, Morikawa, and a Hovland or something to that build, you're going to need to put in like a Luke Donald, and then you could probably get the rest of the guys around 7K. I'm guessing, I'm not doing the math off the top of my head, but... And even though he's not going to make my top 5, he does and has been doing a lot of the things that I see no issues that he could get around here. So I think the first 2 key things we need is a guy that's really good with his irons, and he's been doing that very well. Ranked 7 out of this field over the last 6 tournaments played. Also, he's hitting a ton of fairways. He's not long by any stretch, but he is accurate. So I'm guessing, let's go look at him just real fast. Yeah, so he's saying over the last 12 months, he's been averaging about 285 yards. So, you know, that's enough at this course. You don't need much more. Also does well on the par 4s, opportunities gained. And you can see he's made the last 3 out of 5 cuts. So for 6,000, what's that? I don't know. If you do the percentage, somewhere around 70, 75% cut rate. Maybe it's a little less, I guess like 60, 65. But either here or there, pretty good for a guy at 6K. He has no tournament history here, but if I went through and showed you all his comparable course, he's on here for a reason. But it's going to be a lot of older data. So next guy I also looked at was David Lipsky. And you can see projected ownership right here too if you're interested. But of course, we'll go into that very shortly for the whole field. But David Lipsky also, came off the European Tour, did some Corn Ferry, played great. Kind of struggled a bit when he made the transition to the PGA, but now has really kind of done very well. I mean, he had that T7 at Corrales. Mexico Open, he had a T6, and then he showed up at the Byron Nelson, which was a scoring fest, at a T25. Also had a miscut at Wells Fargo, but again, remember the conditions. The course was very tough. And then Valero, again, tough course. So no issues there. You can see he has been making birdies. And again, good on approach, good on, the driver. Ranks 27th and 20th out of this field. Getting a lot of opportunities. As you see, the putter is where he's maybe not converting some of those opportunities. Let me go click on Lipsky real fast. I just want to see, again, accurate, has 295 yards on average off the tee. So I wanted to look at what his splits were from putting green side. And yeah, so the bent's a little less, but I mean, nothing's amazing. And let's go see what he's been doing with the putter. So, he gained, I don't know, stroke and a half on bent greens at the Byron Nelson. Those were also bent at Wells Fargo. I just want to confirm that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, bent greens at TPC Craig Ranch. I just want to make sure it was not Bermuda. Whenever you're in Texas, you definitely can have either or. The Wells Fargo, he lost a stroke. Those were bent, but they were pretty complicated greens. Mexico Open, that was past Palom. He gained a stroke and a half. Valero, that would be Bermuda, and he lost a stroke. We don't know what he did at Corrales, but that's also past Palom. But he gained, total 9 strokes. So my estimation would be he gained a little with the putter. But anywho, you guys know that I've been touting this guy, and I'm going to stick on him. I think he is your cheap Will Z, if you want to put it, or just an amazing ball striker. He just, has to have that, one crazy putting outing. I think we'll get into his putting stroke gain stuff in a second. But the quick overview, as you can see, on approach, he's ranked 16th out of this field, 44th at good drives, and he's got some length. Maybe not as great on the par 4s at this distance, but he's getting a lot of opportunities. It just needs to make a few more putts. You can see a couple top 25s over the last 2 tournaments. Remember Wells Fargo, very difficult conditions, very wet, very windy, very cold. Mexico Open, yeah, I would expect a little more. And then the Valero, he did miss the cut at Corrales. Of course, he's never played here before. He is a Corn Ferry graduate this year. I mentioned the driving distance on average around almost 310. Pretty accurate. Where he really came onto my scene, where I noticed him, was right at the Farmers. He, I don't know what he finished, but he actually was up there, up on the leaderboard on Sunday. We can find that out real quick. Yeah, so he ended up 11th, which, out of that field on Torrey Pines, that was what really kind of amazed me, and gained a stroke and a half on POA. He gained again on POA. So, funny enough, I think it probably shows that, yeah, POA right now is his positive surface. Now, such a small data sample, but we have had a couple bent greens, and he has gained there. So, again, I like him to have a nice showing again, at 6,300. You can kind of see projected ownership. People are getting wind of this guy. I've even heard him mentioned on some of the other analyst show. And yes, I do also listen just to see what some of the other guys talk about. I kind of laugh on some things that they talk about and when their analysis, but hey, I'm sure they could do the same for me. So anyways, I'm a big Austin Smotherman truther, and I will be playing him, especially at that 6,300 price tag. Like I said, it's a little bit like buying stocks. I mean, get these guys. If you see someone that has these kind of abilities and you can get them at this price tag, you're going to leverage it as long as you can. There was a day that Burns and Gooch were at this price tag. There was a day when, Tringali and Griffin were at these price tags. Sometimes they go back there. But, they do have these elite talents that are going to at times pop up. I already mentioned Kevin Streelman earlier. I think at 6,800, for everything that I see, I think he's a great play. You can see everything. We'll say the driver is elite. He's top 13 out of this whole field of 120. He does play these par 4s very well. Everything else we'll say is better than middle of the pack. He is making birdies. Not a bad showing at the PGA. I mean, nothing great, but for Kevin, for Streelman in those conditions, a T41. He had a T18 at Valero, but he's also had some missed cuts. I'll give him a pass at Wells Fargo. The RBC, that one makes me a little, I don't want to say nervous, but it bothers me a little bit because I think that's a good comparable. But he's also had a good track record here. I mean, he had a T20 here last year, a 31st. Barely made the cut in 2018, and then, at least where he ended up, 76, and then a T18. He's probably even got more history in that. We can look at it real quick. Let me click on Kevin Streelman. So he hits about 300 yards on average, and he's very accurate. That's a very key thing here. Very narrow fairways. We need to have these guys in play. You can see it's the putter that causes him issues. Also, as it will get a little windy in Texas, he has performed pretty well and performs very well on difficult tracks. All that checks out. He has gained very minimal here at Wells Fargo, but did gain 2.5 on bent, right? So the champion at their Southern Hills, I take that back. I apologize. So that was actually Bermuda. This was bent. That was Bermuda. So actually, that's Bermuda and Mexico Passport. So he actually, except for the Wells Fargo, hasn't put it on bent in a while. And what I wanted to pull up while we're here, let's just see his total history at the Charles Schwab. All right, so really his best finish is an 18th, but 20th recently. Also had some miscuts, but that's a while ago. I was just curious if he even had a higher finish at some point. This course should fit him. I like the price tag. I think he's a good value at 6,800, and we'll see. But I will definitely be plugging him in. I think kind of a sneaky play. I mean, even though projected ownership is a little higher than what I thought, but again, analytics will flush things out. Now I've always mentioned Adam Long. He's a guy that I love to play on the kind of vacation swing, the island courses, the Mayacobas, the Bermudas, the Corrales, you name it. But he's been playing some really good golf, and I'm sure this is just a bit of why his ownership has ticked up. You can see the putter's been working. The driver's been working. The irons can be hit or miss. I've seen him where he's just went in fuego with the irons. Really can handle these par fours. Maybe not getting the opportunities that we want, but you don't need to go super low here. That's why I think it would kind of fit. You can see, at least been positive on the birdie side here recently and before. Had a little dip here in April. And then I'm sure this is also what people are looking at. So he's played here 3 times, and 2 out of 3 is top 20. So at 6,900, all that's kind of telling you, hey, this kind of makes sense to play Adam Long. Not very long, but pretty accurate. Another thing we need. You can see the putter is a positive weapon in his bag. And let's just go click on this and just see where he's had. So the Amex, that's a par 72, but it's not, it's less than 7,200 yards. So it's a pretty easy track. And I think that's La Quinta, that's a split, Nicholas. And they've kind of rotated these. Some of these all haven't been, especially during COVID. I feel like most of it is finished up on the stadium course, if I remember correctly, for the Amex. Oops, let's go back to Adam Long. Again, let's see where else. That's where he's had his only win on tour back in 2019. TPC Twin Cities. I mean, that is bit greens. It is a course that you have to keep it in play. There's tons of water. I always think of TPC Twin Cities, and PGA National is a good comparable. So not bad there. Of course, Mayakoba OHL. I've heard some of the other analysts say they see some crossover there. There's all that. I said that the island swing, you got Waste Management, TPC Scottsdale. He's had success in Texas before at the Houston Open. Greenbrier, old TPC White is an excellent comparable course. And I mentioned this yesterday. I didn't use it because, the guys haven't played there in a few years. That was actually the last year, 2019. So I didn't plug it in as a comparable, but I think it could be like top 1 or 2 if they were still playing the Greenbrier. All right, enough on him. You guys know Brian Stewart. I'm going to throw a plug in for him. He hasn't had the greatest, he hasn't had the best success here, but you can see he makes the cut every time. Again, just a plotter, right? It's the putter, and he has not been putting well. You can definitely see that. So he's not making my kind of top 5 cheapie plays, but, I might sprinkle him in depending on how many lineups I put together. But I highly recommend him if you're looking for another guy. Kitayama's on here. He, I would say for upside, you can see, he's made a ton of birdies over the last few tournaments. Still really good with the irons. He's got a lot of opportunities. Everything else, I'd say, is middle of the pack. And, he had that T2 at the Mexico Open, that T15, even under tough conditions at Wells Fargo, but also has some miscuts sprinkled in. And he's never played here before. But I'm going to give him a notable mention. Denny McCarthy, right? I bet him outright. Kind of waiting for McCarthy to strike. I've been waiting for this kind of all year for him to get that win. This is definitely a place that he could do it. You can see he's been playing pretty decent golf. He had that T18 at the Valero. Actually shot pretty well right in his, I don't want to say his home course, but he played there a bit for high school at Avondale Farms in Potomac. And, ended up with a T25, but I think he was first round leader or right there. And then kind of fell back to the pack a little bit. And I'll click on Denny McCarthy just so you can get a little better picture if you don't know much about him, right? Drives it, not very long and sometimes not very straight, but has gotten, what got me interested in him is I heard him talk quite a bit about he's really worked on his ball striking game. So, right, he was elite, led the PGA Tour last year with the putter. I think he's top 5 right now. But that he's starting to get the ball striking is more of an emphasis, right? We got the putters working well. Let's work on the tee ball and the irons. And really, it's the irons that can cause him issues. I already mentioned that he's very elite with the putter, has handled difficult courses, and can handle a little bit of wind. This is the area, like approaching off the tee, right? So if you had it all, right, he would be top 5 in the world. So if he had it all, right, he'd be top 5 in the world. So, anyways, real quick, I'll click on where he's done some of his best. So, of course, there's PGA National, there's the Amex pops up, and again, there's RSM, there's a Texas event, the Valspar. I heard some other analysts. I don't know. I don't see a ton of comparison, but I could, you could sit there and make arguments. That's Bermuda, and everything's Bermuda. I don't know. I I don't know. I think the Valspar is a tougher course. It's a different ask. I think you have to be long off the tee and very accurate. And of course, you could look at Paul Casey back to back and Sam Burns, and that's not a Kevin Kisner or a Nah. So when I hear that comparison, I think it's a bad comparable course on my own thoughts, we'll say. All right, moving along. Alex Smalley, you got a lot of upside there, right? When he does go, you got a T6, a T2 now. Both of those are kind of vacation swing, past Palmy, but that's where he has showed up. Good with the driver. We'll say he manages the par 4 is good, and with the irons. But I just wanted to bring him to your attention. I think he's not a terrible play. Lucas Glover, right? He won the John Deere. Great ball striker, just a horrific putter. But if the putter pops, away he goes. He's also had a really good track record here. A T8, a T23, recently a T43, and I think he might even have some others. But kind of showed up at the PGA Championship, showed up at Valero. Typically in Texas, he kind of shows up, of course, against those comparable courses I mentioned. He popped, so he's going to be one of my, guys down here that I play quite a bit. And you can see pretty accurate. It's got still a little bit of distance. It's typically this putter. It could get really ugly, but you can see he just went off with the irons. I don't expect him to do that, but he can, gain a few strokes with the irons. So if he does that and just makes, come close to neutral with the putter, could have something. Of course, you got Doug Gim from the University of Texas. Sure has played this course a bit. Always shows up at the Players. Kind of showed up at RBC. He had a T14 here last year, so it's again with Gim, great ball striker, not too far off from a Glover. Just can be a horrific putter. Can also make some really bad decisions at times. I just, I've seen him kind of just hit the ball in the water at the wrong time. I'll put it that way. I had to put Mateus Schwab in there because, of course, this is the Schwab Challenge. But that's not only it, right? I mean, he does have an elite skill of putting. Showed up at the Valero, another Texas event. And he's never played here before. But, right, I mean, he's a European player that's been showing up here more. Adam Svensson, I already told you I bet him. Has when you bring up the comparables of what he's done, so right, he's had like kind of 2 careers. He had his card back like 2018-19, lost it, got it back in the Corn Ferry, and then of course came back this year. And it's had some kind of mixed results, right? Showed up at the RBC. He also showed up, I believe, at the Sony. Let's go look at him real quick. So again, he's a pretty elite ball striker, but can be horrific with the putter. You look at the Honda, if he could have at PGA National, he had a chance down towards, I think I mentioned this in when I was actually talking about the betting, losing 5 strokes. I mean, I watched him miss on the back 9, like 2 or 3 or 4 footers that he would have made those. He could have easily been top 3. Again, the Sony, he did a bit of that, but actually he did gain with the putter. So like I said, there's a lot of upside with him. I also don't mind him from a showdown play. And I think 400 to 1. I think he was 35 to 1 to bet him top 10, if I remember. So I like more of a top 10. I don't expect him to win, but hey, if he's that low of ownership at 6,100, again, you're looking for build some of those crazy heavy top end lineups. You throw in a Luke Donald and Adam Svensson, and you've got a lot of money to play. All right, let's move through the rest of these guys pretty quick. So Patty Kazire, right? You guys know him as my Brokeback Mountain pick. I just can't quit him. I've bet him, and it probably all started, I think, last year he had this kind of run in Texas where he went nuts. And you could see, he's making cuts, but just not doing anything too great. But again, he had a T3 here last year, but not a whole lot before that. I don't know, like when he gets hot, it's his putter, and everything else is kind of blah. So he needs that crazy putting round to pay off. Russell Knox, right, again, not a bad ball striker. He had a little streak. Actually, it's kind of before this. I think it was in Florida where he got everybody excited. Let's go take a look at that. Yeah, so the players, he showed up. He had that Sony open. Then had some 33rd, 33rd, 33rd. So he was kind of showing some signs. So not a bad price for Russell Knox. Again, the putter's got to work. And I see he had a T8 here, a T20, a T24, but missed a cut the last couple. So some course history is just a little while ago. And then last but not least, Kramer Hickok, I threw in here, right? He's a local Texan. I believe he played at University of Texas or TCU. I get it confused. But he had a T14 here last year. And you can see, though, not the greatest form. You're pulling from a few data points. He also had that playoff with my buddy Harris English that I bet on at the Travelers, which I think is an amazing comparable course. Is actually my number one. It's at TPC River Highlands. And don't let that fool you. It actually is bent for whatever reason. I don't know why it's got Poe on there. Okay. With that said, I think that's enough on my cheapies, and then I'll summarize again for you guys when I check out of this. Let's go talk about ownership projection. Okay, so let's see who is highly owned. And of course, this again is going to show some DraftKings pricing, but we don't really care about that. I don't think so much. I think you just need to find out who's going to be chalky and where might be some good pivot plays. Where this information is coming from, just for people that might be new, there is 7,200 actual generated lineups. So that means not only did you pick the guys you like, but you actually pumped out a CVS file and then pumped it into DraftKings or wherever and did your mass builds. So that's where this data comes from. We're going to want to focus on this number to the right. And again, this can go up 1 or 2% or down, whatever, but it's pretty accurate actually out of everything I've heard or seen. And your number one chalkiest guy is Jordan Spieth. And what I kind of notice is a lot of my picks are a little chalky, but it's, whoever's, the guys that are doing this, right? I mean, we know this course very well. And so, all this information now. Couldn't somebody at a total left field come up and either, end up top 5 or win this thing? For sure. But, when you get to these kind of tracks like an RBC at Harbor Town or RSM or, you just know the guys, if you've been in the industry for a while, that are the guys that are going to do well here, typically. So no shocker that there's a lot of chalk that I've got. So all the guys you see highlighted are my picks from my top 15. There's some that, I've got a little differentiation, but it kind of, honestly, I don't like to see this as much. I'm kind of hoping that some of my stuff, but no shocker. All right. With that said, two highest owned is Victor Hovland and Jordan Spieth. And then you get down in the Morikawa, you got Na, Answer, Varner, Harmon, Munoz, Kirk, Berger. I'm kind of shocked that Homa is, for that price tag, is that highly owned. You got the Hoagie play that I really like too. Fleetwood, I get it, but I that is one that I will be sticking clear. I'm going to fade Fleetwood. I've just seen it too often where he kind of does this, kind of pops up, gets everybody excited, and then just, kind of fades. But we'll see. Scotty Scheffler, that's a little bit of a differentiation point. I told you that. I mean, his ownership, at least what it was showing yesterday to today, has went way up a little bit. It could be because of how highly owned some of those other guys are. The one that was most shocking, I'll just bring up right now. Where is he at? Will Zalatoris is actually really low owned. So right now, projected ownership is less than 7% for Will Z. And so I'm guessing the narrative that, of course, he had that crazy, 4 strokes with the putter at the PGA. No one's expecting him to do that again. I think also maybe what happened at the Byron Nelson. He was just lost in a playoff. My narrative that I agree with, I'm going to go with, is I don't like the guys like Justin Thomas, Mito, or Will Z, because you just dumped everything you had into a major and almost had a chance to win or did win. And now you're playing, 3 or 4 days later. So, but where I'm going with all that is that Will Z, right now, if you are looking for a pivot from what ownership projections are showing, what we got, I don't know, like 12 hours or something, before these guys tee off. So, who knows if this is going to change, but right now that would be the guy for GPP, that I would definitely consider maybe swapping out to Spieth for. Again, a lot of the guys that I'm picking now, some guys that are lower 10%, you got Neesmith, Rose, CT Pan, Burns. I think it's interesting. Finau, I just can't do it. I mean, I'm not going to be a Finau guy for a while until I see him actually start to put together the putter. I know he had an okay showing at the PGA, but okay is not good enough. There's Mito is down at 11. There's my Riley, kind of scrolling down. So Horseshoe is one of my picks. So that's get a little differentiation there. You got no love for the past champion. Kokrak, Gooch is down below 10%. Austin Smotherman, as I mentioned, is at 8%. Webb Simpson, I had to see a little more. I think Webb, as I mentioned, I think his game is still a bit off for what Webb needs to do to be effective. Adam Long, that's crazy to me that he's at that ownership. But again, they're seeing what I see from a data standpoint. There's Glover, there's Will Z, way down there. For some reason, Tringali, I think, is an interesting play. And where I'm going with that is that once in a while I get these guys as I'm doing my research and kind of thinking things through that just keep showing up over and over and over. And you start to think, I mean, Cameron Tringali out of this field is probably the most established player in this field as in his career and what he's done without a win. Now, of course, you've got the Will Z's and those guys that, but those guys have been around for like a year now. I'm saying, so if you were going with the narrative of, there's been a lot of first-time winners this year, Tringali, hey, could be the guy. Could be an interesting play. I like Streelman still. I don't think Joel Damon's a bad player. There's my Ryan Palmer. This is probably going to hurt a lot of my GPP lineups. If he goes, I'm just terrified of what I saw last year. His first couple rounds at his home course was a struggle. That's still in my brain. So I'm having a little bit of issues with that. Aaron Rai, some people have fallen a little bit out of love with him. Of course, JJ Spawn just won the Valero. So, you got that, which is in Texas. Kisner, I'm a little shocked that he's that low owned. Now, I know he hasn't been fabulous this year, but right, he did well at Austin at the match play. I know it is match play, but it's still you're playing golf on a very comparable course. Of course, he also is a bulldog with the putter. You're going to need that. Typically very accurate off the tee. The irons have been somewhat of an issue, so that could be a bit of it. And then Denny McCarthy, you get unique with him, so that's one of my differentiators. No love for the Brokeback Patty Kazire. There's my Brian Stewart. Ches Reavie, this typically would be a great Ches Reavie course. I just think he, it's just kind of fallen. His game we have not seen Ches Reavie as far as I know. Well, while we're here, let's go do a Ches Reavie experiment. So you can see short off the tee, but very accurate. So that's good. He used to score. I mean, funny enough, there was a time a couple years ago where he kind of led or was up there around the most birdies. So this is interesting. So I didn't even know this. That he had a 15th at the Wells Fargo and a 13th at the Mexico Open. I literally did not even look at him. He had a 10th at the Genesis. So he has had some good finishes, and his win is at the Travelers. Wow. So I'm going to tell you right now, I guess I'm going to plug in some Ches Reavie. He didn't make my top 5, but I, for whatever reason, just thought he kind of fell off the face of the earth. And all these are good comparable courses. St. Jude, the Sony, St. Jude. I mean, you heard it here. Breaking news. Ches Reavie could be a pretty solid play at 6,300. Check him out. I'm going to plug him in a little bit. Svensson should be clicked, so I need to do that. Yeah, I don't think anything else down here. Find Bubba Watson, no love after his showing at the PGA. Matty Jones, right? We always think of windy conditions, but nothing there so far. And I think that's it. I mean, a lot of this is just a bunch of names. Oh, James Pyatt. This is for your own information. I talked about him before. This is a Michigan State grad who plays, of course, golf for Michigan State. He won the U.S. Amateur here just recently. Well, I don't know, within the last 6 months or so. He's played in a few tournaments. He didn't make a cut in any of them. Let's go click on Mr. James Pyatt. You can see, I mean, what data we do have, which is literally 3 tournaments. Pretty accurate. So yeah, he played, let's see here, at RBC, the Masters, and Arnold Palmer, and the irons haven't done a whole lot. Pretty good off the tee. Putter hasn't hit yet. I'm literally just giving you a little bit of information. I'm not saying play him, but man, for a GPP, if you really want to get unique, and if somehow this kid goes out in top 20s, I mean, but I think I'd feel literally more safe to play a Luke Donald under current. So I don't know. I just saw him down there and wanted to bring him to your attention. All right, let's go talk weather and we'll wrap this thing up. All right, so as always, of course, I tell you guys, use Windfinder. This is what everybody uses. Well, not everybody, but anybody that's doing Showdown or whatever. I think it's the best tool out there that we have for weather analysis that's free, I guess is the simplest way to put it. No shocker, you're going to want to pull up Fort Worth. This is in Fort Worth, Texas. And this is a super forecast, so I'm not really concerned about what is going on Wednesday. But if we look at Thursday, kind of already showed this to a degree. So no really need to go into this, right? It's going to be good in the morning, not too crazy in the afternoon, but it could gust up. Of course, this Texas, this could all change. And let's go to the longer 4-day forecast, which is probably a little more helpful. All right, so Friday looks, benign. So I don't see any, real AM, PM. Should be no issues, like I said, even in the afternoon. Yes, is there a little advantage in the morning? I think so, but nothing crazy. Right now it says Friday should be nothing. Then you're going to get, looks like Saturday, Sunday, I think the weather is going to kind of spot out. So for the last 2 days, it's going to be different conditions. You're going to have some wind to deal with on both days. So that's all I wanted to kind of discuss with you on the weather and just tell you, pull in Fort Worth under Wind Finder. All right, let's jump back over and we'll wrap this thing up and get you guys out of here. Okay, so for my top 5 cheapie plays, these are the guys that are 7,000 and below. Number 1, Denny McCarthy, getting better with the ball striking. Looked pretty good again in his home course at TPC Potomac at Avondale Farms. And we already know he's an elite putter. Just see if he can get those irons firing a little bit more and, get us a top 10 would be great for that price tag. Mr. Glover's great ball striker. It's done pretty well at this track. Also, like I said, won to John Deere as his last win. It's the putter. He could be just horrific. So we'll see how that works out. Austin Smirman, again, another great ball striker. Waiting for that spike week. And be nice to see him get a nice little top 10. I will say, and again, we have such a small sample size on him. I think where his game is even better suited is on the tougher courses like Riviera, Torrey Pines, Quail, because I think he is that elite as a ball striker. So we'll have to see how he fares at Colonial. Kevin Streelman, I think, I already stated, probably the best for 6,800 from a DFS play. I think he's one of the better values, and so definitely check him out. And last but not least, you got Adam Long, looking like he's about ready to punch Streelman in the face. Typically, I like to play him on the ocean courses, but hey, everything is telling me right now from recent form and what his game is. Pretty good ball striker, doesn't hit far, but usually pretty accurate. Pretty good putter, and doesn't have a terrible history here either. So that's my top 5, and like I said, I am going to plug in some Ches Reavie after just kind of seeing, like I said, for whatever reason, I mean, he did fall off a cliff a while ago, but he is actually shown up, and this should be a great track for him. Last but not least, my one-and-dones. Like I said, I kind of minimized my one-and-done this one. This is the 5 guys that I'm looking at. Funny enough, though, I've spent a lot of these guys. Right now, it looks looking like Kevin Na is the guy that's going in for me, but I think any of these guys would be great plays. Now, if you've got the JTs that you want to spend or, Scheffler. Of course, I used Scheffler last week at the PGA and got absolutely zero when he actually won 4 tournaments this year. Sat there and saved him, and then there you go. So that can happen, right? So I'm hoping Na can pull something out here. But Berger, Kisner, Answer, Spieth, all should be good plays here. Oh, and I said that I would do this. So I had a couple of you guys in my community ask me to, hey, share what you think is your best GPP lineup. And I mentioned I'd do this, so here you go. And this is what I put together for you guys. This is what I like. So I like Berger, Hoagie, Kisner, Na, and Spieth. That lineup right there in the large GPP, $20 entry, $250K to the winner. I also get left with $7,500. And off the top of my head, I didn't pull it up. But, I mean, you've got a lot of options there. I think Tringali is like one of the first ones. But, yeah, of course, it's GPP, so you probably don't want to spend exact max. Try to make it a little unique. But that's the guys, kind of the core group that I'm going to build some lineups with, and you can swap in and out. But yeah, so we'll see how that actually fares out. Now, like I said, I wasn't going to give you all 6 because, I don't know, it'd be kind of lame if somehow that did pop through and then we all had to split that $250K. But use that and then kind of go with what you want. So we'll see how that fares out. We'll compare and contrast it next week. All right, with that said, that wraps up all my shows for the Charles Schwab Challenge. I appreciate your guys' time. Thanks for checking me out. Hey, I've been noticing that, man, there's a lot of people out there covering golf now, so you've got a lot of options. I appreciate that you guys stick with me, and I think I've got a bit of a unique format on how I do things. Thanks so much for attending. Click that like button. Share this with anybody else for some odd reason that you run across that is looking for this kind of information. If you've not subscribed, do me the honor of joining our community. It is an amazing community. A lot of smart people on this that give me information that I wasn't even knowing. So it's kind of a share, right? We're all going to help each other. We are still kind of a small community right now. So I still feel like we got edges where some of the folks, that are going to the bigger guys. Hit that subscribe button and join this community and help us out. And last but not least, follow me on Twitter. Like I said, I just tweet out anything that I think is irrelevant. And then a little anecdote here or there. But mostly it's like, hey, PGA Tour Communications just brought this out. I think it's worthwhile seeing. So I will keep you up to date with that. All right, guys, have an amazing tournament. Let's all go make some money and keep this thing a trucking, and I'll talk to you guys later.